doing my videos, when people wake up now, where do you start? Yeah. So when you've got a book like that, which is Ground Zero, this is where we start. That's a very, very good point of reference. And today is going to be one that I've looked forward to since Wendy told me about it, because this is major exciting, because we all know that with the law of the seas, maritime law, admiralty law, they're by consent, but they've been by consent for so long that they now don't have any respect for common law, because they've controlled it for so long. And they go, well, it doesn't matter because we don't respect that at all. They'll learn later on in life that they have to respect that because it's the law of God. But until they do, we'll use their own law to
stuff them up the arse, basically.
Yeah, I couldn't have put it better. When I couldn't have put it better.
In good Essex terms.
They have their own God. That's the issue. This is a story of one God, the original, the prime creator, and then the imposter.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right, guys. Well, Charlie, you just say when you want to crack on, do your introduction.
No, this is it. We're just going ad-libbing like this, and I think David can. I think one of the things that I've promoted this is that David's going to explain to people how that they can exit themselves from the tax system and from other corporate systems that we've been put into without our consent. And one of the key things that I've learned on this journey is that when you have a contract, and you have if you're suddenly in a contract and you've done it without your consent, then this is where we have to start from, because obviously we were lost at sea at birth according to our birth certificates, and they've turned it into a corporation, and they've been trading it without our knowledge, without our consent. And now it's time for the public to wake up and find out what their real rights are. And David has done a tremendous amount of groundwork. And this is all factual groundwork, by the way. This is a lot of serious study here that's gone into David's work here, that David's going to share with you today, so that you can learn how that you can become a living soul and a free human being.
I'd like
David, go on.
Before David jumps in, Charlie, we'll start off with, I'll just give everyone a little view. This is Ground Zero. So pretty much this is David's book and how he started. So David, over to you.
Well, okay, I'll talk about the book and how that came about. Originally, I was a solicitor working in London, and I was savvy enough to know that it was never going to be a job for me. And I got out, I took the qualification and legged it, basically. And I ended up delivering parcels in London, celebrating fresh air for the first time in God knows how many years. And obviously that wasn't quite enough for me, because I've got a brain that I need to use, otherwise it atrophies like anybody else's. And I ended up teaching myself Spanish, and I took my Spanish to Spain, where I had my first experience educating. So I was teaching English to the Spanish, and that taught me that their education system is knackered, because I was having all kinds of students boast that they could speak my language, but they couldn't speak a word, and they didn't understand a word I said. So I thought, note to self, education system, ? What's going on? I came back to this country where I found myself teaching Spanish to the English A level, and I had the same problem. It was a situation in which I had this enthusiasm for Spanish because I'd just been living there, but all they wanted to do was pass an A level. So I thought, note to self, education is not about enthusiasm and learning, it's about passing exams. And then, very long story short, I found myself teaching the card game Bridge, which is a lifelong passion, and I got funded to take it to schools. And I spent years and years perfecting my techniques, and I thought, whoa, there's a future here. But sure enough, I got defunded, because as soon as I got close to the beasts, to where the beast sort of really pulsates and controls children, in other words, I was offering something fun and dynamic, I got booted out of schools. That led to me resenting the entire education system. I wrote a report to my funders. That got shelved. And the resentment of being ignored again led me to write an ebook with the working title "School No Place for Children." The ebook got the attention of one or two people that said it's good, but you need to flesh it out, make it into a proper book, which I did, and did loads of research, and the research and things just kept coming to me, and in the end, it got nice reviews. It's been well liked. Apparently, it's quite famous in educational circles, which came as a surprise to me because I thought, crikey, with a title like that, I thought they wouldn't touch it with a barge pole, but they do. It's been read by PhD students in education, professors, teachers, people who actually write the curriculum for teachers. Long story short, again, I found myself at Glastonbury at the Alternative Thinkers Symposium in 2019 as the keynote speaker. That went very well, and I was just about to embark on a tour of School No Place for Children, when I call it Hovis, although you say it's your channel now, so I can call it COVID. COVID hit, and that changed everything. And I realized that I needed to teach people something a bit wider than just what happens at school. But back to the book, the school is all about what happens to us at schooling, how it produces complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and that makes us vulnerable to attack. It also makes us ignorant of law, health, you name it. We don't know it. We don't know anything about it. And so we're vulnerable to manipulation. We're also wobbly because we're in stress and trauma. So that means that if they spread a lie, and that lie is designed to traumatize us further, then we have no response or defense to it.
What has happened as well, reading, I only got your book the other day, didn't I, when I saw you doing your
true, yeah.
So I've worked in education for a long period of time. I know the whole system's flawed because I teach, mindset, control of human system, getting out of your programs. I tell you one thing it has done. I'm only halfway through the book. It's made me really bloody angry. So I'm running a lot of anger on the inside because there's even stuff I didn't realise, which is it starts with the dehumanisation, which is one thing you talk about in the book. Through the whole school system, we are literally being dehumanized. We're being made compliant through fear, humiliation, punishment, and we're having literally as a fashion, our souls stripped away from us, and we're being turned into just traumatized shells that, like Pavlov's dogs, every time a bell rings, you're going to move and do something. Every time someone says something to you, out of fear, you comply. And then obviously through that, it goes into adult life. So David, there was one thing that you said to me, I think it was during your talk, there's 10 aspects of the purpose of school: humiliation, dehumanization. What were those things?
Well, it's six agendas, which were six agendas. I think what you're thinking of are the 10 tentacles of the beast.
Yes.
Which, and I only cover 8 in my talks, but we can go through all 10 later on. Yeah. This was revealed in a lecture in 1918, would you believe? 1918. That's how far ago this knowledge was revealed by an educationalist called Alexander James Inglis, and it was hidden in the vaults of Harvard University, and it was uncovered by my predecessor on this path, a guy called John Taylor Gatto, now deceased. And he uncovered that the purpose of mainly secondary education, not so much primary, is to enforce compliance, uniformity, social position, differentiation, so separate the wheat from the chaff, so that you're starting to build an elite, and so the haves and the intellectually haves and the intellectually have-nots, and humiliation, and a form of elitism. So you create and that is basically, I mean, if the English schooling system doesn't meet that description, I don't know what does. So that means that you're going to have generation upon generation who believe that they are worthless, and generation upon generation who believe the opposite, that they are God's gift and entitled to everything. So it's a total, so Eton, Harrow, and some of the other posh schools, they learn the true law, or how the law works. The rest of us learn bugger all.
Yeah.
And I'm still playing catch up. You know, really, it's just so my talks, my books are all about my journey of catch up. I'm now translating it for books, talks, and God knows what, and moderated chats like this. You know,
Will help us catch up.
Indeed.
Yeah,
So
we are some.
how does this equate then, David, from to get into, because for all of those who are watching, David's currently doing a big figure of 8 of the UK, doing constant private talks. So keep an eye out for that as well, like what he's doing. But I think we should just jump straight into that. So how does this equate then? Now we know we're totally indoctrinated, we're taught to be compliant, we're humiliated, we're basically all traumatized and given PTSD through school. How does now this play out in life as adults with everything that's going on? And then obviously we'll get into legislation and law and etc.
Well, it means that people are hurting inside. Let me just give you an anecdote. I always like to fill in the blanks with anecdotes so that people can grab hold of something. I was in a cafe about 2 years ago with a friend discussing education, and the waitress came over, and I said to the waitress quite randomly, I said, "How was your schooling?" And she said, "Oh, it was fantastic. It was lovely. It was good. You know, I loved it." And I thought to myself, I'm not having that for an answer. That's too, it just doesn't feel right. You know, I don't know anyone who would say that and mean it. Anyway, I said, "Are you sure I said, "Are you sure that your schooling was that good?" And she said, "Oh, yeah. She came back, she went away. She came back 10 minutes later and scratching her head. She said, "You know what? I've been thinking about that question." And she said, "You're right." She said, "My schooling was awful." She, when you answered me that question, all I could think of was the good times I had with my mates. You know, the fun we had during breaks, lunchtime, preschool, after school. She said it was actually horrendous. And what that means to me is it's a reminder that our brain is kind to us, especially when we're young. When we have traumatizing events, it doesn't store them directly. It pushes them away. Otherwise, we won't be able to, we'd hardly survive. So we've got all these traumas buried deep beneath. And what the elite have done is they've set that up so that they can trigger those traumas with a keyword or a uniform, a visual clue, something numerical, something verbal, something non-verbal. We go into trauma, and to avoid that trauma rearing its ugly head too much, we comply, because compliance is a way of avoiding that trauma. It's a way of hiding it. So for those who are setting out on the path of non-compliance, I would urge you to look at de-traumatizing yourself. And my talks, I met a psychologist recently where she's a trained psychotherapist, and we're going to add de-traumatizing techniques to the slides that I show in my talks.
Yeah,
So
I've got a lot of practitioners that can help out with that as well. We use a lot of trauma therapies.
Yeah.
But that is very true, because when I started this journey, I mean, even like doing videos, you know, when I first met Charlie and we were doing videos beforehand, you'd be a little bit, oh, can I say that? Because what if I get into trouble? And then it's like, hang on a minute, what on earth am I thinking? How can I get into trouble for having my own opinion? But because it is so ingrained, even for people that are, you know, wide awake, and, you know, I've got for a woman, sounds wrong, but I've got a big pair of balls. You know, I was brought up by parents that put some good stuff into us, and even that, you know, I still get on the inside every now and then a bit of, oh, should I be doing that? And then it's like, hang on, that's not mine, go away. You know, I'm entitled to live on this planet and speak what I want to speak, as long as I'm doing no harm to another person.
Exactly. And I've got another anecdote, which is from my own skin here. When I was out and about doing rallies and holding microphones and telling people what I believe to be the truth and things that would help them, in November, I found myself announcing myself for the first time on Morecambe Promenade as the people's lawyer, because I decided that they didn't need to know my name because that's not relevant. And I couldn't think of what, and all of a sudden that came to me. Anyway, on that particular day, I was kind of arrested. It was a political arrest, not handcuffed. I was arrested and de-arrested in just literally 3 minutes. But as a result of that, nearly 6 months later, I got some paperwork hand delivered by 3 police officers. And it said notice of criminal charge. So the first thing I can tell people is that notice is just an offer. So penalty charge notice, liability notice, or notice of liability. Notice means offer to contract. And as some wise guru said to me recently at the London Rally, notice means not ice. Ice is level, so it's not a level playing field. So that's another word play that they get up to. Anyway, so I decided that I was going to deal with it in a honourable way. So I've sent them a letter of conditional acceptance of that email, actually, and because I've still, still got unresolved trauma inside of me. Not much, thankfully, because I have released a lot of it. My first response was, bloody hell, police are coming around and threatening me with this, that, and the other. And I stood up myself behind the door. She said, you need to accept this. And I said, no, you need to go because you're in trespass. And I said, if you keep this up, you could go to prison for 14 years because that's section 26 of the Criminal Justice and Courts Act 2015, abusive position by a police constable. Because at the end of the day, they're just cash collecting. So that's abusive position. So she said, she didn't say anything. She just stony silence. Anyway, there was a court date recently, and obviously I'm not going because you don't go to court. That's their territory. Or if you do go to court, you have to really know you have to really know what you're doing. You have to really know your buttons to stand in your common law sovereignty. And it's not easy because they've got loads of tricks and traps for you. So I thought, well, theoretically, I know I could do it, but I thought, no, I'll give that one a miss. I'll do it in writing, in email. And I've just given them a letter of conditional acceptance. If you want me in court voluntarily, it's going to cost you 10 grand. If you come for me and coerce me into court, 50 grand. So what I'm giving people an example of is that they're doing commerce, which is what you and Charlie hinted at before. So you do business with them. It's all business. If you really had done anyone any harm, like you say, the universal principle, do no harm. If you really had contravened the universal principle, they'd barge the door down with a warrant and take you away, no questions asked.
Yeah.
So leaving that aside, it's all business. It's all offers to contract. So I said, happy to contract, but you must pay me 10 grand in advance and I'll see you in court.
Yeah.
They've not, as far as I'm aware, my bank balance is the same as it was a few weeks ago, roughly. So they haven't paid me the 10 grand, so they're not going to see me.
Yeah. That's a brilliant move when you can use their own law against them.
Yes.
But this is where you need to have, and this is where this video is very, very important, because this is telling you what your rights are and understanding the word notice, understanding, because they will very often say at your front door, do you understand? Which is a trickery. Do you stand under me? Because it's by consent. There are so many tricks. They're a devious bunch of bastards that now we're going to learn how we can handle them. And you were absolutely bang on right. You've held them to account, and they can only deal with corporations. They cannot deal with living souls. And what people need to know that, so that when they come, they say, "Oh, we're going to serve a notice." This is your notice, and you can. The way to deal with it is by replying. The safest way is by replying by email. But we'll put David's link in below, the people's lawyer here, so that if you need his advice and need his help and guidance, he can help you, because these people are bullies. What they're doing is wrong, and we're just trying to educate people. And I've said through this whole journey, I'm not the Messiah. I'm just Charlie. I don't know all the answers, but I know a man who does.
Well, it's
all I'm doing is
people
put you in touch.
Yeah, it's finding people to help, Charlie, isn't it?
Of course it is.
Before I met David, with the PCNs, just to start with, I've never paid one in my life. And it wasn't because I understood legislation. It's just I always thought they were a total piss take. So I would just constantly, I might have gone through 10 letters just going, no, please take me to court. No, please take me to court. And in the end, they just go, oh, we just can't be bothered with this one. And they've let them all go. And then just before doing your course, a friend of mine, a mutual friend, Jonathan, had one. And I think it took about 8 letters to get that one sorted. Then did David actually does a course, Charlie, a 5-week course to teach you about contract law, privacy law, and equity law. And throughout that, after that, another friend of mine got a PCN, and we wrote a 1-page letter. It was hysterical. After knowing the legislation, we just wrote this 1-page letter, sent it off, and they just sent back saying, awfully sorry, we won't be troubling you again. And that was just, so we've got it down to like 1 page now. And it's, so this proves that once you know, and it is all contractual, consensual, and you have a knowledge base of what to ask them to stand in your power.
Well, if you've got a copy of that letter, I'd love to put the link in down below so people can see for themselves.
Yeah, that one, we're happy to share something that works, because it's quite funny.
Yeah,
Wendy, can I just jump in? Was that a data subject access request, basically?
Of a fashion, it's one that
or conditional acceptance?
And it was a conditional acceptance, David. So
okay, yeah.
Because it's all we are really happy to pay you this fine if you can just answer the below questions. And it was all the stuff about, are you the landowner? Do you have?
Oh yeah, it's all in the notes.
It was just hysterical. And at the bottom, my friend wrote, all future communications will be charged at £150 per minute of my time.
Brilliant.
He's actually putting, right, for you to now do business with me, this is what it's going to cost you.
Brilliant.
And it was just hysterical, and they just wrote straight back and went, literally, not in these words, but can't be bothered, go away, we're not going to aggravate you.
Can I just jump in on something Charlie said? I'm very much the people's lawyer, which means the people in general. So my advice is very, very rarely individualized, because it would just slow me down. So what I do is I signpost people to the website, to my course. Just occasionally, when my heart is bleeding, I will email, send an individual email to people, especially mums of boys and girls who are distressed because the dad is threatening to prosecute them and inject them, and God, or vice versa. Sometimes it's the dad who's the freedom lover, and the mum is caught up in the matrix. But apart from those noble exceptions, I just keep my consultations generic. But yeah, I just thought.
No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. And also, we're going to talk about exiting ourselves from the tax system.
Oh, piece of piss. Let me just tell you how I did it. And this is years before I knew what I was doing. I was running a limited company teaching bridge in schools, mini bridge technically it was called, because it was a simplified version. And this company called Mr. Mini Bridge Limited was defunded, and my wise young accountant actually said, just let it go. The Inland Revenue will dissolve it for you. Company's House will dissolve it for you. So I did. So it got dissolved. And then the next tax year, the Inland Revenue, who'd been used to me sending in these tax returns, said, you don't appear to have sent in your tax return. Naughty boy, £100 fine, £100 penalty. And I hadn't done enough research, and I thought, I'm not going to pay that, because I can't pay, because remember, I was skint, I was defunded. So it galvanized me into doing the research. While I was researching, I got another 2 letters. By the time the third one came, it was £1,000. But by this time, I'd done enough research, and I just wrote to them saying, I'd like to inform you that I've now gone private, and therefore what I earn is none of your business. Thank you very much. Goodbye. And I've not heard since, and that was 7 years ago. Wow. Now that was that was a Neanderthal version of what I would write now. But the point is, it's the intention. When you put them on notice, and again, it's notice that you have gone private. In other words, you're a man working with other men and women and not using your public owned name, which is your birth certificated name. You're not advertising in the public. So, for example, the People's Lawyer has a public website, and I accept that it does. But when people sign up for my course, they don't go through public channels. They are invited to email me privately and pay privately, bank to bank. And that keeps me in the private.
Okay.
And that is the same with companies, isn't it? We went through this the other night on one of your talks, to go, without going into one of your courses, it's basically to take yourself into the private realm. So was it with private members associations or something?
PMA, the Americans call them PMAs. They're going to be the rage soon. where, if they're not already, where basically whether it's an online, if it's online, then you have a private members, subscription based section, and anything can get behind that curtain, behind that virtual curtain. Anything can happen. It's no one's business apart from whoever is behind that curtain. And if it's a physical business, then you put your private trespass notice, and again, templates are on the website. And you keep the door closed, and you have an entry code if you've got an entry code, or you have a number to call, or you have a recognition, either physical or by camera, and you only allow people in who you know are with you, members or friends or family, and anyone else with a clipboard, a uniform, council, police, whatever, they just can't get in. And because they can't get in, they're not, they are, therefore, they don't exist. They just disappear. They can't harass you. And if they try to harass you, then they're the ones that are committing public order offences.
And because every individual in their eyes is a corporation rather than a living soul, once you exit yourself from that corporation and become a living soul, they have no jurisdiction over you.
Absolutely. And they work on presumption.
Yes.
If you say nothing, they presume that you are operating your personhood. Your personhood is what's created by the government. And it takes a composite of your Christian or given name or names, puts it together with your family name or surname, creates a certificated name. And most of us then go to school, and that name is indoctrinated into us. We learn to respond to it, and we learn to forget that it is not us. We are not it. Mm-hmm. But the government keep on. They progress this so that when they knock on your door and they say, "Are you Mr. Charlie Ward? Are you Mr. David Edelman? Are you Miss Wendy Smith?" In our innocence and our ignorance and our indoctrination, we say yes. In which case, either you're nicked, or here's your bill, or you blah blah blah. Whereas all we have to say is, no. What evidence do you have that I am that name? Mm-hmm. Excuse the noise, but hotels just got busy.
Yeah, just to let you guys know, David's in an actual hotel reception at the moment to get some Wi-Fi to do this with me and Charlie.
Well, and the reason I'm in the hotel lobby is because if I was in my room, I would be on Wi-Fi, and I'm on the 4th floor, and you'd be losing me constantly.
So we'll have to make do with a bit of noise instead. It's all good.
It's no problem at all.
I brought my own Ethernet cable. There it is. I'm Ethernetted up, and they've kindly let me Ethernet myself up so that I can at least have a stable link to you.
Brilliant. This is so important. I remember speaking to John Smith. He was the first person I spoke to from the common law court, and I did a show with him. And a lot of people were completely in shock, and they were unaware about the birth certificates, and they were unaware of our rights. And more people are becoming aware. And at this moment in time, we've had a difficult year for a lot of people from a business perspective and a personal perspective. So people's eyes are going to light up at the thought that they can exit themselves out of the tax system in a hurry, and do it within their own laws, which will upset them no end. But it is very much a question of knowing the correct procedure, because they've tricked us, they've conned us, they've scammed us, to steal from us and keep us oppressed. And all this, and in very simple layman's terms, to keep us enslaved. And this is to try and set everybody free from the enslavement, to realize that you are a living soul and you have rights. And this is to educate and help you. And David has a website that you can go to find out all the information that you need. And we'll put a lot onto our own website as well, so that you can see the letters that have been written by Wendy. Wendy is bound to add a little bit of her own magical humor in there as well, which will make it fun as well.
And half swear words though, Charlie.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what makes it fun, isn't it? Everyone can put their own personality into, rather just being an off-the-shelf corporation.
Yes, indeed. It's nice to be able to have the. I tell you what, it does do. Once you get the knowledge of this and you have comprehension of it, you start feeling like actually it doesn't matter who knocks on my door, because I can deal with this. Whether it's the census, everybody went into a state of panic about the census, and it's like David said again, it's just a contract. You know,
Yeah.
you're being asked to contract into something. And I left it until letter number 6 came through my door. And there's a way, again, we won't go into this, but there's a way of, as soon as you, David will explain this in a minute, there's a 72-hour window to send something back under a contract. But letter number 6 arrived, and I actually thought, I'm opening this one because I'm done now. And I opened it, and everything was written in red. And it was all, you must pay this now. Must just means, you know, it's an offer. You must pay this now. And this is where it made no sense. Under the Census Act of like 1921 or whatever. So it's an act. This is not law, it's an act. By law, you must pay this, otherwise you may receive a criminal record and be fined. And I thought, well, none of that makes sense in the same sentence, because I studied criminal law last year, you know, just the basics of it to get a really good knowledge base. And criminal law, the quick version is, to commit a crime, there's got to be a victim.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, hang on, if I don't fill out this form, who's the victim? So that doesn't make sense. They've not stated the law, and it comes under an act. And an act is like an act, you know, as David's explained to me. So I actually phoned up the census people and said, hello, I'd just really like you to explain some stuff to me, because none of this makes any sense about my census offer. And he said, what doesn't make any sense? I said, well, number one, like I read him the whole sentence. I said, none of that makes sense in the same sentence. I said, so I just need you to answer me 2 questions. Question number 1, what exact law am I breaking if I do not fill out this form? Can you please tell me that? Because I want to go look it up in a law book. And he went, oh, hang on a minute, I'll have to put you on hold. And he came back to me and he said, I'm awfully sorry, I don't hold that information. You've got to write to your local MP. And I went, oh, lovely, thank you. Right. And I said, okay. He said, what was the second question? I said, I need to know exactly what the criminal charge will be and what crime I will be committing if I do not fill out this form. Could you tell me that, please? Oh, and who will the victim be? And he went, oh, hang on a minute, I haven't got the answer to that. I'll just put you on hold. So it's like, da, 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 da. And he came back and he said, I'm really sorry, I haven't got the answer to that either. You're going to have to write to the local MP. Now, this is where it got funny. Priti Patel, and I'm going to name and shame this woman because you couldn't lay straight in bed, Priti. It's as far as that. I've written to her about so many things. Just ignores me when she can't give me an answer. So she sent me, I said, answer the question, what law is it, what criminal offence, and legislation. Sends me all the legislation, blah, 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 blah. Nowhere in that letter that she sent back to me could she tell me what crime I will be committing, who the victim is, or what law it sits under. So that's got to tell me something, you know, it's just fear-mongering. A lot of people don't realise. I don't know if I'm right or wrong with this, David, but in that sentence, that's basically harassment and coercion in that sentence that they sent me from the census people.
Well, there's actually in their world, there's Freedom from Enslavement Act. I think it's Freedom from Slavery Act 2015, which is very interesting. And in the definition of exploitation, you could argue that coercing, threatening people with things like census fines, tax fines, is a form of slavery, according to their definitions. But let me just break down the phrase "you are required by law."
Yeah.
Because that's really interesting. There's a lot we can unpack a lot just in that one phrase. Right, you are required by law. Okay, you makes no sense. We're not taught grammatical English, and if we were taught grammatical English, we only taught spelling at school, not grammar. If we were taught grammatical English, which they are at the elite schools, we would realize that you is plural. So you is therefore ambiguous. When an actor addresses the audience, it's correct to call the audience you. You gathered, all you gathered here. But it's thou. Thou is the individualized person to person, second person, thou, like thou art. So you is, and if it's ambiguous, then no contract can come about. So you are required in legalese, which is the language of law, well, their law, language of commercial law. Required means requested. So you, some ambiguous crowd of people, are requested by law. Well, the word contract is missing. So someone whose identity we don't know is requested by contract law. In other words, If there is no contract, there is no law. And the thing about contract is, a man or woman have to sign something to be contracted. So if you have, like, when people say to me, I have a tax liability for last year. Do I owe it? Do I need to pay it? And I simply ask them, did you sign anything? And they say, no. We'll say no. So I say, how can you be liable? You didn't sign anything. We are only obliged by our signature. Theresa May, about God knows how many years ago, 7, 8 years ago, when she was Prime Minister, said we are governed and policed by consent. And whatever they do to us and whatever they want from us, what's the first thing they ask for? A signature. And in the worst case scenario, you would sign if they're threatening you, but you sign under duress, vico actus, which means against my will, all rights reserved. These are the things that are all on the website. I would urge people to start with the videos. And the question that we asked before is, where do you start? Well, apart from the book about where all this trauma and compliance comes from, there's a video that if to help people wake up, that helped me wake up, called there's two: Nature of the Cage, which was John Harris was in that one, and from JFK to 9/11, everything is a rich man's trick. Those are the two videos, apart from my videos, that I would urge people to watch to help them, to help them progress from out of the matrix into the free world as we're creating it as we speak. So no signature, no contract, no law. End of. It's that simple. I mean, I'm here to simplify things because in their world, I mean, the Americans have got 60 million codes. We've got about 4 or 5 million. That's not law. Those are rules. And a rule is something that you do out of habit. It's not law. As a rule, I have breakfast at 11 o'clock. Well, not legally obliged to have breakfast at 11 o'clock. It's just my habit. So rules, regulations, regular. It's all the secret's in the wording. They're telling you that it's something that they expect of you out of habit and custom, but they recognize that they cannot enforce it unless you fall for their tricks.
Also, I think one of the things that John Smith pointed out, which I found fascinating, was because we've all been created into corporations right from day one. It was without our consent. So any contract with us is not with us as a living soul. It's with the corporation that was created without our consent. So from day one, they haven't got a leg to stand on, because they're fine. Their contract, whatever they want to call it, it was never ever with your consent from day one.
Well, I totally agree with that. Well, I would add that the name that we've been using, which is essentially an international trading name, is in extremis. In the worst case scenario, you simply say, "Forgive me for using that name, but I don't own it, and it is not me. It is not. As you can see, I'm a living, breathing soul, and I don't own it. I don't pretend to own it. So if somebody claims that I am claiming ownership to that name, please forgive me. It's all been a misunderstanding. I am just a man, and I have used that name." And so, in other words, you go from claiming ownership to just accepting that you've used the name to do commerce, to do business. And that changes everything, because most of the time we're simply being punished for, in effect, breach of copyright, because it's crown copyrighted material.
Yep, exactly right. But this is where it's so important right now. And you're absolutely right. If you've been to Eton and you've been to any of these top universities, and they will educate those people to understand that. For the normal human being that has gone through the normal educational system, they would have no idea of this. The elite know everything about
you just
this.
think, Charlie, don't you? You just think that it is as it is, and there's nothing I can do about that. And again, that comes back to, ground zero, as we call it, with the book and the education system. We're taught to just follow that because that is true.
Yeah.
It's not, and it's just a fascinating subject. There's two things I wanted to bounce you into, David, if it's okay. because this really baffled me. I mean, this still hurts my head now, and I'm really trying to get my brain box around it. The mail system, because we're not run by the Crown, we're run by the Postal Service, basically, and the 72-hour window on contracts.
Oh, right. Now we're talking, Wendy. Okay. Well, if the law that they're operating is commercial law, contract law, the highest form of that law is international postal law run by the Universal Postal Union. And it's run by treaty. And all nations subscribe to the Universal Postal Union Treaty. And it's, I'm not an expert in this, but I know enough to be able to advise people appropriately. And basically, if you know your way around postal law, you can, for example, take ownership of legal documents and make sure that the judge doesn't play silly buggers and tricks you. Like, for example, when people have gone into court with their paperwork, and the judge will turn their paperwork over and say, I see nothing here to that effect. The judge is looking at a blank piece of paper. But if you stamp the reverse of your paperwork on each page and cancel that stamp with your signature, again, more details in the course, then the judge would be committing an international crime of tampering with another person's mail. And they don't go there. So let's backtrack a bit. Okay. So if you're sent a windowed envelope, that is not post at common law. That is mail. That's internal commercial mail. Because to be post, it must have an address written on the front of the envelope. It must ideally be written to a man or a woman. It must have a return address on the back. And the most important aspect, it must have an actual postage stamp, because that which has been cancelled, because that is the value. That's the value for the contract. Every envelope contains an offer to contract, and to have value, to have potential value, consideration in technical language, that is represented by the stamp. If, on the other hand, you're sent franked mail, there's no value in franked mail, so that's postal fraud to begin with. There's no address or name on the front. It's inside the envelope and you can see it through the window. So that's another aspect of fraud. No return address. And even if there's a return postal address, excuse me, PO box number. PO box number is a non-contracting venue. So basically, they are sending you what purports to be an offer to contract, but it's not. It's total fraud. So what you can do is send it back. You can either send it back unclaimed, return to sender, mail fraud, or you can cross it out like you're crossing a check as a potential instrument, and put return to sender, return for cause without dishonoring commerce, no lawful consent, no legal contract. Your offer to contract is declined, and you should send it back within the international commercial window, which is 3 days or 72 hours. And because it's 72 hours, if you get this offer on a Friday, you have to send it back by Monday morning. And this is why they post legislation, statutory instruments, on a Friday, so that by Monday we're all deemed to accept their offers. And that's another thing that we'll probably go on to later in this conversation, of how we can treat legislation as offers to contract.
I think we should just jump into that. This is something, Charlie, interesting that came out of David's talk that I saw last week. You're making me cough now. Stop it. Through
summer cold.
Yeah, through a process of working with one of your students, wasn't it, who came up with this concept as well of how we can deal with new legislation, not old legislation, because that's done, dusted and signed off. But there's a very interesting concept that David's going to get a one-page website working on, so we can all do this. David, can you enlighten us?
Okay, well, yeah. If it is correct that we have 72 hours to reject any offer to contract, if it is correct that all statutory legislation is posted by a corporation who can only ever offer us a contract, that means that all legislation is an offer to contract, which means that we have 72 hours to reject it in honor. It would also explain that if that's true, after 72 hours, we are deemed in their Roman civil law, international commercial law, to have missed the window of opportunity, to have accepted the offer, and that would explain why barristers, even the most senior barristers in the land, whenever they prosecute the government for their legislation, they always fail, always, because they're operating their personhood. Barristers operate as persons, not people, and which means that they are doomed to fail. And now, whether the moot point, the more moot point, is whether these barristers know it and they're just going through the motions to claim a few £100,000 in fees. Who knows? I'm not making any accusations, but so what I'm postulating, and we're gonna the proof will be in the pudding, is that we create a website in which a couple of million people, all those people that attended the London rally, for example, can sign up, no cost. Basically, we have their digital signature, and we will send it to all the right people, like the Prime Minister, the department head, or the minister for the department that's promulgating the legislation, Attorney General, chiefs of police, the Council of Chief Police. I always miss someone out. Maybe all the MPs, and we're putting them on notice of rejection. Thank you very much for your offer to contract, but we, the people, hereby reject your offer. And obviously, we put the statutory in, so all the correct reference points, and that would release our personhood from compliance. We are already released as men and women because they're only offering us a contract anyway, and we can, on an individual basis, just say thank you, but no thank you. But this will accelerate the destruction, or it would in effect mean that they are on mass notice that we, the people, are not interested.
You use the word that they are acting as a person. That was very interesting, because I did some research into the origins of the word person. And it's taken from Latin for mask wearer.
Yeah. Ancient Latin and ancient Greek.
Ancient Latin, ancient Greek. That's
Greek,
correct.
yeah. You operate, and in the Bible says, don't be a person, don't have dealings with a person. And the Bible is, and I'm not a Bible basher, but the Bible is warning us that when we have dealings with a person, we're not dealing with a man or woman, and we're dealing in commerce, and we need to recognize that. Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, this grand awakening in terms of law and finance is all about people simply awakening to the fact, the universal principle, that they are living souls, as Charlie was saying earlier, living souls with the capacity to say yes or no, according to whether or not they feel that they will benefit, or that the benefits will outweigh the disadvantages. And that's it. It's that simple. Now, if you look around the world and you see the level of compliance, you might think that all this is a bit pie in the sky. It really isn't. So just because 4 billion people have lost the plot, or 5 billion people, or whatever, that doesn't mean that the other 1 or 2 billion are nuts. You know, it's a numbers game. All we need to do is build up the number of people who realize that they are men, women, boys and girls, and simply the assertion of that fact changes everything.
And you only have to ask David Icke from how he feels today against how he felt 30 years ago when he started this journey. He was a lonely voice 30 years ago, pointing out the truth to people, and now he's at the centre of a rally in London with between 1 and 2 million people there. And he's starting to see that. 30 years ago, everyone thought he was bonkers, but now you start to realise that he wasn't bonkers at all. He was a bit like Freddie Laker. He was way ahead of his game,
way ahead of his time. And when he said, "Human race, get off your knees," the difference between now and then is, right now the human race is getting off its knees.
Correct.
And people like me have come along to give those tools, those necessary tools, and the necessary information to accelerate the process and to ease the process, because for some it can be painful.
Yeah.
There's no getting away from that fact, because if, like one woman said to her husband, the husband was a client of mine, and he reported to me that his wife said to him, "Don't tell me anymore," because as he was waking up, because if you tell me anymore, I'll realize that my whole life has been a lie and I can't face it. I don't want to, she said, "I don't want to know."
Hmm.
And you know, and this is what we're dealing with. So we're going to have to, as soon as enough people are woken up, then the rest who are waking up, we're going to have to be their, in effect, their guides, their comforters, their healers. And that will be the next big job. But at the moment, it's still, we're still getting enough people off their knees. Then.
Well, I come up against that sort of mentality on a regular basis, and I have it within my own family where they just don't want to know. You know, it doesn't affect me. Well, sooner or later, it will affect you, but at the
Yeah.
moment, and it's very interesting to see, and I think you alluded to it earlier. Um, the people that, well, certainly for Wendy and I, because Wendy and I sort of have the same mentality. Wendy grew up sort of behind the bar in a public house, so you treat everybody, you know, with respect. You'd never know who's got what and who hasn't. But the people that we would generally regard as the simpler folk have far more common sense, and the ones that have degrees and have been educated, and without being picking out, I will pick out one: pilots who've got a mind full of aviation law and everything else. Seem to lack a little bit of common sense. They, oh well, I must have the vaccine. I must have that because otherwise I lose my job. Um, where's your common sense gone?
Well,
Where?
yeah,
Gone?
Charlie, as I say in my talks, to have a holistic view of life, to have the full common sense panoramic view, you need 360-degree view. So
Hmm.
your 1 degree, they owe you 359.
Hmm.
And you're right. The worst offenders, if that's the right phrase, for lack of common sense, are the graduates.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
young graduates now. I mean, it's getting so that, you know, they I mean, they need the sat nav to get to the toilet.
yeah, yeah.
My
I
sat nav actually, funny enough, confused me. I was saying to my mate when we were coming up to see you on Friday, in the end it was just like, can we just scrap the sat nav and just use a map?
well,
This is
yeah,
ridiculous.
exactly. The one thing that I notice, because I'm 61 years old next week, so when I grew up as a young boy, by the side of the road there was an orange flashing light on a stick that was black and white, and you had the green cross code. So you had to look left, look right, look left again. If all clear, walk across and walk fairly quickly so you were out of the way. Nowadays, we've got traffic lights. Number one, in America, if you cross over the road when the man is red, we're going to fine you. That's jaywalking. You're not even allowed to have common sense. And I see here down in southern Spain, which I find hilariously funny, when the red light is with stop for people to cross the road, and there's no cars, and there's a runner. He's running on the spot. He can get across in half the time, but he's not allowed to use common sense. I'm like, I look at him and I just shake my head, and they don't understand that when you shake your head at them, they start looking each way to see what they've done wrong. And I just think this is what they've been programmed. Nothing on the road, no cars, nothing.
The education system again, that's the whole
It is.
thing. You know, you start from ground zero, programmed through to now just be a following robot. Was it David? Was it you who said the other day actually that slavery was never abolished? It was just expanded to the whole of
Yes.
humanity.
Yeah, well, the thing is that slavery is another mindset thing. You can't. There's no such thing as slavery laws. I mean, there might be offers to contract as a slave, but there's no. You know, you cannot enslave a man, woman, boy, or girl. That's actually spiritually impossible. But can I just jump back in on the common sense thing, the bigger picture, which is really important. It's if you remove common sense from a man, woman, boy, or girl, then they are in effect no longer a man, woman, boy, or girl. They're back to being a person that can be controlled.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the control agenda with the nanotechnology, the technocrats, they are agents of the beast machine. And this imposter, once it's removed all traces of common sense and panoramic view and knowing how to survive, wilding the child, knowing how to pick berries and forage and deal with cuts and grazes and eat properly, etc., etc. Once it's removed all that, then it says it's okay. It says we have got everything. We will provide for all your needs. And this is what the young generation, this is the trick that they're falling for. The great deceiver, the beast machine, whatever you call it. Some people call it Satan. Not, I'm not fussed. Whatever language you want to use, that's up to you. But if it can remove the last vestige of common sense, it wins, we lose. But what we're doing as we're getting up off our knees is recovering all the skills, the culinary skills, the health, health awareness. I mean, doctors and lawyers have got something very profound in common. At law school, I didn't learn any law whatsoever. And if I'd have gone to medical school, I would have learned nothing about health, well-being, and nutrition. So it's a direct parallel. And this is a symptom of what the beast, the beast will feed you with nonsense, with something of no value, and say, it's okay. We've got medicines. We've got this. So the fact that you know nothing, it doesn't matter because we've got you covered. We don't need, when David Out said, human race, get off your knees, what he was hinting at is that we are enough. We don't need artificial support.
Sure.
No, well, that's the germ, the germ theory, terrain theory, isn't it?
Yes.
This is the pharmaceutical model, is germ theory, basically. So the easiest way to describe it, you've got a fish bowl that's really filthy dirty and the fish isn't very well. Yeah. So all we're going to do is we're going to inject the fish. We're going to keep injecting the fish with shit until the fish gets better. But the environment is absolutely poleaxed. So what would you do if you had a dirty fish tank and your fish are ill? The first thing I would do is clean the bloody water. And then if you put that's the terrain theory. And then if you put that into practice as a human, with a living soul, that means our environment. So what are we breathing? What are we eating? What are we watching? Who are we socializing with? It involves everything to do with that system. So at the moment, we're being poisoned through chemtrails, food, TV, even poisoned with each other's energy systems. Because if someone's living in fear and they've got all this toxicity going on the inside, that you can transmit that to other people through your energy field. So it's a matter of if I start to feel ill, I'm a bit in dis-ease of some description, the first thing I do is go, right, where's my head at? Oh, right, I've been thinking some right negative shit for a few days. Right, that's not helpful. Right, what else is in my environment? What have I been eating? Who am I socialising with? What have I been watching on the TV? And I start cleaning up all of these things, and then, funny enough, start feeling better.
When I was training as a healer, working with a healer, and he was mentoring me, when I was researching, as you're saying, Wendy, it's not about what you add, it's what you take away. Take away all the toxins, whether they're physical, environmental, mental, emotional, or spiritual. Take away the toxins and you get back to your pristine state. Look how well most children are. They're in a pristine state. By the time we're 25, 30, 35, we're beginning to fall apart. And that's because it's what's been added. Injections, crap food, sugar, alcohol, bad habits, bad thoughts. But clean all that up, as you're saying, and miracles happen. Miracles happen.
Yeah, you can feel better in 24 hours. I've done this. I've woken up feeling like I've got some sort of sniffles starting, cold, bit of snot, and then just gone, what's that about? So then I just go bang, 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 bang. And by the end of the day, I can be feeling perfectly okay again.
Back on terrain theory, they've done experiments. They've taken the snot of infected people and injected it into healthy people. Nothing happens.
Yeah, well, it's the terrain, it's the epigenetics, isn't it? If anyone wants to look into this deeper, go and study a bit of Bruce Lipton with the
Bruce Lipton, Biology of Belief. Yeah,
because it's like he says, everything starts at a cellular level. I mean, you always say as well with the what are the two things that create illness? Toxicity or deficiency?
Yeah,
I've got it now. I've got it. I'm not a naturopath, David, but I've got it now.
You can tell you've been to my talk, Wendy.
Indeed.
Exactly.
Charlie, do you want Oh, go on, sorry.
I was just going to say on that subject we were on, there was a lady very kindly put out a video which I decided to test, which was the rind of 3 grapefruits and the rind of 4 or 5 lemons, taken off and put into a bowl, 2.5 liters of water, boiled for 3 hours. I take it every day, and isn't it funny how the mentality of certain people? It's
Sorry
basically
about that.
hydroxychloroquine in
Our
its
computers have
in
gone
its
offside
rawest
and we've got
form,
no delivery
and
notes.
it works
We're
absolutely
going to do a
brilliantly.
lot.
And the first question I had from somebody is,
All right.
well, you might upset the
No,
big
no,
pharma.
we
I said,
can't
well, that's
even. Our customers are
exactly
asking
why
for
I'm doing
cash
it.
upload. I haven't got
That's
any
exactly
invoices
why
for
I'm
them at the
doing it.
moment until they
And
get
also,
confused. It's all right.
it's free.
No
I mean,
problem.
especially in Spain,
We'll let them
muscle
sort it
food
out
is not
for you, mate.
expensive.
All right. See you later.
You can also spray it on debt collectors.
Yes, exactly.
And just add a bit of garlic as well, just in case they're parasitical vampires as well. Just add a bit of garlic and job done.
Sure.
Just in case.
Mother Nature has the answer to everything.
Of course.
Oh, yeah, 100%, 100%.
The other one that I loved on my journey was the fact that if you get a lemon,
Yeah.
that's not covered in wax, and put it in the freezer overnight and grate the skin off, the rind off it, and put it on a salad, it's 400 times more powerful than chemotherapy, and it's got no side effects.
Nice. I have a quarter lemon. My sister bought me a lovely NutriBullet. Not that I'm advertising anything in particular. There's lots of other whizzy things that you can juice things with. But every morning now I have a quarter of a lemon with a couple of sticks of celery, some grapes, a few dates, and a bit of ginger in there. And it's lovely. I just whiz it up into a quick shot, bang. It's lovely. Feel great with that. It's good. Alkalizing the body is very good, isn't it, for you?
It is.
Yes, your state of your pH balance determines your health, basically, for sure.
Yeah.
Because all these things can't exist in an alkaline state.
Absolutely.
There was just two other things, because I'm sort of like directing. I know you don't mind, Charlie. Just directing us through some this morning.
Wendy, you're a woman. You're a woman. Women direct.
That's right.
Great. Someone said this to me the other night at your thing. I don't move, and I had a cup of tea brought to me. I had someone go and check my car to make sure my alarm wasn't going. They said you're a very good delegator, and you do it in such a way that no one notices. It's like, yeah. I have a talent. There's two other things that, I think from my perspective were important: tacit agreement, and also narcissism, psychopaths, and sociopaths. David.
Well, tacit agreement is what will happen when you go into fear mode and do nothing.
Yeah.
When if you don't challenge something, that something can bite you up the arse.
Yeah.
So what I do in my talks is I get people to say, look, if you want to start to get off your knees and start reprogramming yourself, take yourself back in a mental time machine to when you were at school and this teacher towering over you said, why are you late? And where's your homework? Why haven't you done your homework? Most people, there are notable exceptions, you may have been one, Wendy, go into panic mode and start, well, the dog ate it and the bus was late and blah, blah. What we have to do is reframe that and say something like, well, and grow in our heads like we're now on the same height, so we're eyeballing them. Well, miss or sir, could you tell me why you're asking me that? What's it got to do with you? So in other words, you just fire questions back at them. What's it got to do? And by the way, your lessons are crap. So you should be grateful that I'm even here in the first place, So what I do in my own time, whether I do my homework or whether I get the right bus or the wrong bus, nothing to do with you. The fact that I'm here, please be grateful for. Thank you very much. In terms of the narcissism, again, very briefly, I'm generalizing, and I'm not talking about malignant narcissism. I'm just talking about the generalized narcissism in which we're all on that spectrum. But basically, the narcissists are the ones that are taking orders, complying. They want a quiet life. The narcissist is an empty shell, and they adopt the role of person willingly. They're happy to be a person, no questions asked, because the person can give them status and wealth. The psychopath is the one, the elite and the leaders, the CEOs, the politicians, behind the scenes, pulling strings, manipulating, planning, scheming, plotting. And they need the sociopaths, who are basically the idiots, who are happy to know nothing, but just get their jollies from carrying out orders and from making our lives miserable. And who are we? Well, we're the normal human beings. Some of us are empaths, some of us are not, but we're sensitive and we're compassionate. And so we have this sort of we're being triangulated. Okay, so on one side, the narcissists are playing out the pantomime with the masks on and virtue signaling, and the psychopaths are running the show, and the sociopaths are saying, right, don't worry, leave it to us, we'll enforce it, And And so we're in the center of a storm, this triangular storm, and it's quite a job to stand up for yourself with all that shit going on. And so that's why I'm figurating around the country to say to people, in the manner of David Icke, yes, get off your knees, but once you're up off your knees, make sure you know who your enemy is.
Yeah.
And exactly what their traits are, so you can deal with it. So if it's a narcissist, ignore them. No contact, no contract. That's how you deal with narcissism. And for those who've been survivors of narcissistic abuse, you'll have worked out that you can't negotiate with them. You can't tell them the truth. You can't tell them you can't be right. You can't tell the truth. So steer well clear. In terms of the sociopaths, now that we know who we are, you just return a question with a question. Oh, really? Show me the law. Or am I obliged to answer that question? Or turn your back, keep silent. Yeah. So all these techniques, I mean, I'm going over them very hastily. But if people want to know more, go on the website, watch the videos, do the course, etc., etc., and they'll get there, no problems. But above all, know who and what you are dealing with.
And that was the one lovely thing that you left us with at the end of the talk. It's basically the one ultimate solution to everything. Is love.
Okay, yes. The drum roll, please. Oh, I'm gonna knacker some of my talks now, don't you? Because Charlie's so popular now. I'm gonna. Yeah, we saw that on Charlie Ward. Yeah, we know you. We know your secret.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm unveiling all your secrets.
Yeah. Right. Okay. It's learn to love yourself.
Yeah.
That's the antidote to. That's the antidote to everything.
That's so important. And when you start to love yourself in the correct manner, without arrogance and pride, but to love yourself with feeling and care, and also another part of that is being when you can only love yourself when your moral compass is accurate, so you know the difference between right and wrong. And when you learn to trust your intuition, knowing what's right and wrong, you can love yourself very easily. And we're going through a part, we're moving from darkness into light right now, from the control of the matrix and evil, moving into a completely different world. The definition is a lot easier now once you've reset your moral compass, and you can you feel a feeling of warmth inside you when you follow what David is saying here. And once you, like I did, I mentioned before we came on camera, when I went into a Spanish court and pointed out exactly that they were a corporation, along with the Dutch court were a corporation. They didn't like it up them at all. But that gives you a feeling of self-worth. And that's what we need to get to every single person. Love yourself without being arrogant, without pride getting too much of a hold of you, but just to appreciate that, as I've said many times on this journey, I'm one piece of a puzzle, and every single person is an equal value piece of a puzzle. That when we come together, we get clarity. But there's not one piece that's more valuable than another. So you need to appreciate your own value. And as John Cleese once said, out of a million seamen, you were the one that survived. You were born a winner.
Absolutely. I'd like to demystify two massive concepts, which you've just hinted at. But before I do that, I just want to support what you've just said as well, which is, I say to people, if you have successfully incarnated into a physical body, you are a master of existence. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. The two things I'd like to demystify: good and evil, much misunderstood. There's a book called The End of All Evil, and if you try and look for the English version, it cost you $2,000 because there was only 2,000 copies printed. So it's only 60 pages. But the guy, whoever it was, I forget his name, simply said that evil is basically control, coercion. It's forcing you to do things against your will. That's evil. Mm-hmm. So that the good is the opposite, and the opposite is allowing you to make free will choices. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's freedom. So all those people that were ever told you're not a good person, that's nonsense. You know, good is freedom, doing no harm. So it's living a free will, a life based on free will choices, while at the same time doing no conscious intentional harm to anyone, including self. So narcissism and self-love. Okay, self-love is the ultimate in the centered position of a man or woman, boy or girl. They're loving themselves when they are in their center, and it's not arrogant, because, and it's not narcissism, because narcissism is actually the absence of self-love. It's more like self-hatred. It's an emptiness.
Yeah.
When you're in a state of self-love, you are in your center, you're in your God spot, and you're on it. Basically, in the vernacular, you're on it like a car bonnet. You're absolutely on it, and there's no way you could be arrogant. Arrogance is a papering over the cracks. It's a disguise.
Yeah.
I had arrogance when I was a kid because I'd had an semi-elite education, and there was a hole in my heart, there was a hole in my soul, and I covered it over. I papered it over with arrogance.
Yeah.
But once I found myself and the people's lawyer, I have to, proudly announce, there's the pride again, that it suits me because it brings together all my skills.
Yeah.
I feel like I've found myself. I now no longer need to be arrogant to paper over the cracks. I can be as humble as anything. And it's the more successful the people's lawyer is, the more humble David becomes.
Yeah, sure.
Beautiful space to be in. So,
Yeah, it really is.
You're going to put links, Charlie, aren't you, to the bottom
100%. There's a lot of people going to want these links.
To clarify, it's the People's Lawyer UK as well, because there's one in America, isn't there, David?
Well, there's on YouTube. I have to be the People's Lawyer UK, because that guy, they always beat you to it, the Americans. But the website is thepeopleslawyeruk.com, and all the other BitChute and Brand YouTube. That's the People's Lawyer.
Okay, perfect. Well, it's been an absolute privilege, David. Thank you very much for your time, and Wendy.
You're very welcome, Charles and Charlie and Wendy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, on my birth certificate, I was Charles Henry Ward, and now I've gone to the common law. I've become Charlie Ward.
Okay. There you go.
There you go.
Charlie is.
Charlie is
same as my dad, Charles Roger James Smith, his name.
Yeah.
But he calls himself. Well, all of his old friends call him Charlie, but he's known as Roger, which is really weird. So just pick one, pick a name at random, and use it.
Well, thank you very much. The boss is coming in now.
Oh. Hello, Nursa.
That's Wendy. She's in her pajamas, so she's not going to come on the camera.
Oh, no worries. Nice to see it. Well, guys, thank you so much for doing this today. It's been lovely.
Absolutely brilliant.
Info with people and just get people back in their power so we can start moving this stuff forwards.
Brilliant. And if you can WhatsApp me across the links, Wendy, I'll get them put out today.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, David.
No, thank you.
You're welcome, Charlie, and bless you both.
Same to you. Lots of love.
Lots of love.